massive and incredibly relevant. We're mapping out the specific geopolitical stances of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, pulling directly from his recent, totally sweeping interview on Fox News. Look, whether you're a total foreign policy wonk who follows Middle Eastern diplomacy daily, or you're just trying to wrap your head around the current strategic arguments playing out on the world stage, this explainer is designed to break it all down for you. Why does this single interview matter so much? Because it acts as a direct blueprint for how the geopolitical future of the Middle East might actually unfold. Now, to keep things completely objective with this highly charged material, we're organizing his sprawling interview into a super clear map. The Fox News interview itself, his stance on Iran, the proxy conflicts, the US-Israel alliance, his concerns about Turkey, and finally, the path to peace. Let's get right into it.
First up, the Fox News interview and setting the stage. So, to really grasp the rhetoric here, we've got to look at exactly what kicked off this discussion. This interview with Fox News host Brian Kilmeade didn't happen in a vacuum. It went down right amidst some serious unrest in the Middle East. We're talking recent military strikes, specifically Operation Epic Fury, and a massive, high-profile funeral for an Ayatollah that brought in regional delegations from places like Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Qatar. This recent flurry of regional activity, that's the exact jumping-off point Netanyahu uses to lay out his whole geopolitical worldview. Which brings us to his primary focus, his stance on Iran, dealing specifically with demographics and fanaticism. Check out this number, 90 million. That is the population of Iran, a truly massive nation. And Netanyahu puts this number front and center right out of the gate. Why? Well, he's actively trying to draw a hard line between the Iranian government and the everyday citizens who actually live within the country's borders. Now, this juxtaposition is absolutely wild. On one hand, he characterizes the current ruling regime as just a minority that has effectively hijacked the country. You know, the group taking to the streets to chant "Death to America." But then look at the other side. He claims that 80% of those 90 million people actually hate the regime. He's arguing that this vast majority is desperate for freedom, but they're being violently suppressed. He basically says if they could, they'd throw the current leadership out tomorrow. And that brings us to this exact quote from the transcript. "This is a battle of freedom versus fanaticism." That phrasing is totally intentional. He's not just framing this as some local border dispute, right? He's painting it as a fundamental ideological clash that's visibly playing out on the streets of Iran itself. All right, that brings us to the proxy conflicts in Lebanon and Gaza. Throughout this interview, Netanyahu leans heavily on this highly charged phrase, the axis of terror. He uses it to describe a whole network of regional proxy groups that are backed by Iran. According to him, this entire network is built fundamentally on tyranny and terror. So by using this one umbrella term, he effectively lumps multiple, geographically spread out conflicts into one giant unified threat narrative. So who exactly is in this axis? Well, Netanyahu points straight at Hezbollah in Lebanon. He claims they're literally threatening Lebanese citizens at gunpoint, even when the Lebanese government actually wants them out. Then he points to Hamas in Gaza, describing them as tyrannical rulers who stay in power purely through fear. He literally claims they'll shoot dissidents in the back of the head if they don't fall in line. He's explicitly blaming the survival of these regimes on raw violence from goons who, in his words, murder and maim in broad daylight. And host Brian Kilmeade actually brought the receipts to back up the scale of this threat. Just look at the sheer volume of incoming strikes here. We're talking over 13,000 launched at Israel and over 8,000 aimed at the United States. For Netanyahu, these staggering numbers aren't just statistics. They are absolute proof of the regime's unyielding aggression and a shared danger that both Israel and America are facing right now. Which perfectly pivots the conversation to our fourth point, the US-Israel alliance and what he calls a model relationship. Now, the host definitely pressed him on the occasional friction and direct criticism coming from the U.S. president regarding Israel's actions. But Netanyahu didn't miss a beat. His response? "We are your model ally." It's a fascinating strategic move. He's firmly reaffirming Israel's unwavering loyalty to the U.S., totally bypassing whatever political headlines are dominating that specific day. It's all about diplomatic balance here. Sure, he openly admits they have occasional differences of opinion, pointing out that the US president has his way of expressing things, and so does he. But then he immediately counters that by saying they see eye to eye on almost everything else. He frames these disagreements not as some deep fracture in the alliance, but just as a normal open conversation where respectful allies iron out their differences, because they share the same fundamental values. And here's a really smart diplomatic touch. He brings up the number 250. He explicitly gives a salute to America ahead of its upcoming 250th birthday. He goes as far as praising the United States as the world's ultimate force for good, stating point blank that without America, there would literally be no democracy and no freedom in the world.
All right, Section 5. After praising the U.S., he uses that alliance to issue a pretty stark warning. Concerns regarding Turkey. This part is crucial because it came right before a planned U.S. presidential meeting with Turkey. Netanyahu lays out this intense three-part diplomatic indictment. Number 1, he points out that Turkey occupies half of Cyprus, a NATO country. Number 2, they threaten Greece, another NATO country. And number 3, he claims they actively harbor, finance, and basically roll out the red carpet for Hamas. And he doesn't stop at just state actions. He goes right after their leadership's rhetoric, too. Netanyahu claims the government is infected by the Muslim Brotherhood and calls them an extreme movement that hates America. He even brings up that their foreign minister wants to be the governor of Jerusalem and has allegedly claimed the Jewish state has no place among humanity. Now, we are reporting these exact words verbatim because it really highlights just how severe and uncompromising his diplomatic stance on Turkey has actually become.
So, all of these accusations build up to one massive, urgent warning to the U.S. Do not provide Turkey with F-35s or fighter jet engines. Period. According to Netanyahu, giving Turkey advanced American aircraft would dangerously upset the power balance in the Middle East. He argues it threatens not just Israeli air superiority, but America's whole strategic posture in the region. Make no mistake, in the world of global security, that is a huge line in the sand.
Finally, we hit Section 6, the path to peace and looking forward. When the topic turns to future stability, Netanyahu immediately looks backwards, specifically to the Abraham Accords. He brings this up as his ultimate proof of concept. He reminds everyone that those accords brought together 4 totally unprecedented peace agreements that nobody thought were actually possible. By doing this, he's making the case that broader peace in the Middle East isn't just some fantasy. It's theoretically and practically achievable. But how on earth do we actually get there today? Well, Netanyahu's core strategic thesis comes down to 2 absolute mandatory steps. Step 1, you have to substantially weaken the Iranian regime. And only after you do that can you move to Step 2, opening up the path for new, broader peace deals. In his mind, it's a completely locked sequence. You absolutely cannot get to Step 2 without knocking out Step 1. And wow, does that leave us with a massive geopolitical puzzle to ponder. We've just mapped out Netanyahu's entire blueprints. The hyper-focus on the Iranian regime, the ongoing battle against proxy groups, the heavy reliance on the U.S. alliance, and those incredibly stark warnings about Turkey. So here's the ultimate question to walk away with. With all these overlapping alliances and fiercely competing visions, how is the U.S. going to navigate this minefield to shape the future of Middle Eastern diplomacy? It's a complex, incredibly high-stakes narrative that's undoubtedly going to keep playing out on the world stage. Thank you so much for joining me to map all this out today. Keep analyzing, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.